There's a disturbing paradox destroying the minds of high performers right now. Biohackers swallowing 30 supplements at dawn. Executives microdosing nootropics between meetings. Students stacking modafinil with alpha-GPC before exams. Optimizing, tracking, measuring every cognitive metric. Do everything the productivity gurus recommend. And yet, their minds are slower than ever. Not because the compounds don't work, but because they've transformed their consciousness into a battlefield. Spring, 1604. A dojo outside Kyoto. The Tokugawa shogunate had just unified Japan after centuries of war. Peace meant warriors now fought with strategy, not just steel. Miyamoto Musashi faced an opponent who should have killed him. The man was faster, technically superior, had studied under masters Musashi never met. But Musashi walked away without a scratch. Not because his sword moved quicker, because his mind had disappeared entirely. This is the story of Mushin, the empty mind, a principle so counterintuitive that modern neuroscience only recently discovered why it obliterates every cognitive enhancement drug ever created. If you don't understand this, you'll spend the rest of your life artificially propping up a mind that's fighting itself, making you slower with every enhancement. In this video, you'll discover why the samurai rejected mental stimulation, how emptiness creates superhuman response time, and the specific technique that makes your unenhanced brain outperform any chemically optimized mind. Let's begin. Tokyo, 2019. A neuroscience laboratory at the University of Tokyo. The lab smelled of antiseptic and ozone. The hum of EEG machines filled the air with electronic whispers. Hiroshi was 28 years old when he volunteered for the cognition study. He'd been optimizing his brain chemistry for 3 years. Modafinil for focus. L-theanine for calm alertness. Lion's mane for neurogenesis. Alpha-GPC for acetylcholine. Rhodiola for stress adaptation. He could recite the mechanisms of action for each compound. Explain receptor binding sites. Chart his cognitive performance metrics on 14 different parameters. His working memory had improved 23% according to NBAC tests. But he had a problem that no amount of supplementation could fix. His reaction time in unpredictable scenarios was deteriorating. Not during planned tasks, those got better. But when something unexpected happened, his response lagged. A half-second delay that shouldn't exist. A mental stutter between stimulus and action. During the baseline testing, the researchers noticed something odd. Hiroshi's brain scans showed hyperactivity in his prefrontal cortex during reactive tasks. His anterior cingulate cortex, the brain's conflict monitor, was firing continuously. Even at rest, his default mode network wouldn't quiet. "Your brain is thinking about thinking," Dr. Tanaka said, studying the multicolored scan. "That's good, isn't it?" Hiroshi asked. "More neural activity means better performance." The researcher shook her head. "We're comparing your scans to a control group. Master practitioners of Zen archery." She pulled up another scan. The archer's brain during the moment of release showed something impossible. Vast regions simply, offline. Prefrontal cortex, minimal activity. Default mode network, silent. Anterior cingulate, barely detectable. Yet his accuracy was superhuman. "How?" Hiroshi whispered. Dr. Tanaka smiled slightly. "They call it Mushin. We call it Transient Hypofrontality. Would you like to learn?" Hiroshi didn't know that his entire understanding of cognitive enhancement was about to shatter. Chapter 1. The Collapse of Effort. The first 2 weeks was cognitive torture. Dr. Tanaka had connected Hiroshi with Takeda-sensei, a 73-year-old master of Kyudo, Japanese archery. The old man's dojo occupied a wooden structure in the mountains outside Tokyo. No electricity. No metrics. No optimization protocols. Just a bow, arrows, and a target 28 meters away. "Before you touch the bow," Takeda-sensei said, "you must learn to touch nothing." He had Hiroshi sit in Caesar position, kneeling, back straight, for 20 minutes. "Don't meditate. Don't focus. Don't try to clear your mind." "Then what do I do?" Hiroshi asked. "Nothing." Hiroshi's mind rebelled. Every molecule of his optimization-trained consciousness screamed for a task. What's the objective? What's the metric? What am I improving? His prefrontal cortex, strengthened by years of nootropic-enhanced focus, refused to release control. After 4 minutes, his thoughts were a hurricane. Is my posture correct? Should I be breathing differently? Is this even working? I should be tracking this. I need to measure baseline versus progress. Maybe I should take phenylpiracetam before the next session to accelerate learning. You're doing it wrong, Takeda-sensei said quietly. I'm not doing anything. Exactly. You're not doing with great effort. The master's eyes crinkled. Your supplements have made you very good at pushing. Now you must learn to stop pushing, or you'll push yourself into slowness. Hiroshi continued because something in Dr. Tanaka's brain scans haunted him. That silence in the archer's mind. That impossible performance emerging from apparent nothingness. Week 3 brought a shift. During a morning session, Hiroshi sat in Caesar as usual. The wooden floor creaked beneath him. Mountain air drifted through open shoji screens. A crow cawed somewhere in the cedar forest. His mind did its usual performance. Planning, analyzing, measuring, seeking. But for just 3 seconds, maybe 4, something strange happened. The internal monologue simply stopped. Not because he forced it to stop. Not because he achieved anything. It stopped the way wind stops. For those few seconds, there was seeing without a seer. Hearing without a listener. The crow's call didn't enter his ears, there was just sound, complete and total. No interpretation. No judgment. No Hiroshi experiencing the moment. Just the moment, experiencing itself. It felt like the difference between watching a movie about swimming and suddenly being underwater. The moment passed. His mind crashed back online like a computer rebooting. What was that? How do I do it again? That must have been what? But now, Hiroshi knew something his nootropics never taught him. Consciousness has gears. And the highest gear is neutral. Hiroshi intensified his practice. Stopped the supplements. No modafinil. No racetams. No adaptogens. Just 20 minutes of nothing each morning. When he sat, he became sitting. When he walked, he became walking. When he finally picked up the bow after 5 weeks, he became the bow. Not metaphorically. His hands on the bamboo, the tension in the string, the weight of the arrow, these weren't things happening to him. They were just happening. No middleman between action and actor. The other students thought he'd lost his edge. He stopped optimizing his sleep with gadgets. Stopped tracking his heart rate variability. Stopped measuring his reaction time. But Takeda-sensei watched, said nothing, waited. Week 8 brought the real test. During a session with all students present, Takeda-sensei did something unexpected. While Hiroshi was at full draw, arrow knocked, string taut, breath suspended, the master struck a bronze bell behind him. Gong. The sound exploded through the dojo like a physical force. Old Hiroshi would have been thinking. Flinch control. Maintain form. Don't let stimulus disrupt technique. Compensate for startle reflex. Adjust aim for. New Hiroshi simply released. No thought between sound and action. No processing. No decision tree. The arrow flew. Something miraculous happened. Perfect center. The other students stared. Takeda-sensei nodded once. Hiroshi felt no pride. No satisfaction. Just the residual vibration of the bowstring against his forearm. That evening, the master called him over. "You've stopped taking the thinking pills," Takeda-sensei observed. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I finally understand what they were doing." "Tell me." Hiroshi chose his words carefully. "They made my mind louder, stronger, more capable of holding thoughts. But speed doesn't come from thinking faster. It comes from not thinking at all." Pause. But how did this actually work? That's where the real secret lies. The master poured tea with movements that seemed to occur outside of time. "Mushin," Takeda-sensei said. "No mind. But translation fails." He set down the pot with absolute presence. Mu doesn't mean without in the way Westerners think. It means the state before the distinction between having and not having exists. Hiroshi felt understanding crystallize. It's not that the mind becomes empty. It's that the mind stops interfering with itself. "Closer," the master said. "Your nootropics, they sharpened the sword. Made it harder. Heavier. More powerful." He held up a finger. But a sword too heavy cannot cut cleanly. It crashes through the target with force, leaving rough edges. Mushin makes the sword disappear. When the sword disappears, cutting happens without a cutter. Takeda-sensei leaned forward. "This is what the samurai discovered that your neuroscientists are only now measuring. The fastest mind is the mind that vanishes." He produced a scroll, ancient paper crackling as it unrolled. Miyamoto Musashi wrote this after defeating 60 men in combat. He never lost a duel. Never. Do you know his secret? Hiroshi shook his head. The master traced calligraphy with his finger. In the void is virtue, and no evil. Wisdom has existence, principle has existence, the way has existence, spirit is nothingness. Spirit is nothingness, Hiroshi repeated. When your spirit empties, when your kokoro, your mind-heart, holds no thing, reaction becomes instantaneous. Not because the signal travels faster through your neurons. The master tapped Hiroshi's forehead. Because there's no one home to slow it down. Before we continue, let's understand what was actually happening. Modern neuroscience has discovered something the samurai knew 400 years ago. When Hiroshi practiced sitting without doing, he was inducing transient hypofrontality, a temporary reduction in prefrontal cortex activity. This isn't mysticism. This is measurable neurological state shift. Dr. Arne Dietrich at the American University of Beirut conducted extensive research on what happens to the brain during flow states and expert performance. His findings: the prefrontal cortex, your brain's executive control center, partially deactivates during peak performance. That voice in your head narrating experience? That's prefrontal cortex activity. The part that plans, judges, evaluates, worries? Prefrontal cortex. The mechanism that creates your sense of separate self? Prefrontal cortex. Studies on elite athletes, jazz musicians, and master archers show a consistent pattern. During optimal performance, prefrontal activity decreases by 20 to 40%. Default mode network, the brain's mind-wandering system, goes almost completely silent. Dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, responsible for conscious decision-making, shows minimal activation. What increases? Direct sensorimotor pathways light up. Procedural memory systems take over. The cerebellum and basal ganglia, ancient brain structures that operate below conscious awareness, become dominant. When the archer released without thinking, he wasn't using less brain. He was using a different brain. The samurai didn't have fMRI machines, but they understood the principle perfectly. Miyamoto Musashi, who wrote the Book of Five Rings after a lifetime of mortal combat, said, "The primary thing when you take a sword in your hands is your intention to cut the enemy, whatever the means. Whenever you parry, hit, spring, strike, or touch the enemy's cutting sword, you must cut the enemy in the same movement. It is essential to attain this. Cut in the same movement. No gap between stimulus and response. No you in the middle. This is Mushin no Shin, mind without mind." Literal translation, no mind's mind. Deeper meaning, the mind that doesn't grasp at its own thinking. Takuan Soho, a Zen monk who advised the greatest swordsman of the 1600s, explained it this way. The mind that stops at anything, even for a split second, gives the opponent his chance. The mind must always be in the state of flowing, for when it stops anywhere that means the flow is interrupted, and it is this interruption that is injurious to the well-being of the mind. But there's a deeper layer. When Hiroshi released the arrow while fully present, his sensorimotor cortex directly controlled his muscles without prefrontal mediation. Decision-making latency, eliminated. Self-consciousness interference, eliminated. Performance anxiety circuits, offline. This is what the samurai meant by heijoshin, everyday mind or ordinary mind. Doesn't mean casual or careless. It means the mind in its natural state before self-consciousness fragments it into observer and observed. Here's the practical mechanism. Your nootropics enhance the conscious, deliberate mind. They increase working memory capacity, boost executive function, strengthen attentional control. All of that makes you better at planned tasks. Studying, writing, strategizing, analysis. But in reactive scenarios, combat, conversation, improvisation, real-time problem solving, that enhanced executive function becomes latency. You experience this when you overthink a tennis serve or choke during a presentation. Your conscious mind, strengthened and amplified, takes control of processes that need to be automatic. The samurai discovered that the solution isn't a stronger mind. It's a transparent one. Now let's bring this into your life. Sarah was 34, a trauma surgeon in Seattle. Life and death decisions in seconds. Her hands inside someone's chest cavity. Bleating monitors. Shouting staff. Arterial spray. She tried modafinil for the focus. Phenylpiracetam for stamina during 36-hour shifts. L-theanine to take the edge off. But during critical moments, the ones that mattered most, she noticed a delay. Her mind generating options when her hands should already be moving. When she discovered Mushin through a colleague who practiced Iaido, everything changed. She began practicing 15 minutes each morning. Not meditation. Not visualization. Not affirmations. Just sitting with uncontrived awareness. After 6 weeks, something shifted in the OR. During an emergency aortic dissection, 30 seconds from death, her hands moved before she consciously registered the problem. Clamp. Suture. Pressure. No thoughts between seeing and acting. The patient lived. Her surgical times decreased by 18% over 3 months. Error rate dropped by half. She stopped all cognitive enhancers. Didn't need them. Here's how to practice Mushin starting today. Step 1. Morning dissolution, 10 minutes. Sit comfortably. Back straight but not rigid. Don't meditate in the way you think meditation works. Don't try to clear your mind, that's still doing. Don't focus on your breath, that's still controlling. Instead, let your awareness rest in its natural state. Thoughts will appear. They always do. Don't fight them. Don't follow them. Don't judge yourself for having them. Just notice that thoughts are appearing in the space of your awareness the way clouds appear in the sky. The sky doesn't do anything to the clouds. It just allows them. Common mistake, trying to achieve emptiness. That's the mind trying to grasp no mind, impossible. How to know you're doing it right? You're not trying to do it right. Step 2. Single task immersion, throughout day. Choose one routine activity. Washing dishes. Walking. Making coffee. Do it without distraction. Not mindfully in the therapeutic sense, that's still monitoring. Just do it. Become the doing. When washing a cup, there's just washing. No you watching yourself wash. No part of your mind thinking about the next task. The Zen master Shunryu Suzuki said, when you bow, just bow. Why this matters? You're training your consciousness to collapse the observer-observed duality. That duality is the latency. Example scenario, you're washing dishes, and suddenly you notice you're planning tomorrow's meeting. Don't judge that. Just return attention to the temperature of the water, the sensation of the sponge, the sound of plates touching. Return without effort. 1,000 times if necessary. Step 3. Gap detection, real-time practice. During conversations and reactive tasks, notice the gap. The space between stimulus and response. Someone asks you a question. Notice, there's the question, then a gap where you think about your answer, then you speak. That gap is conscious processing, necessary for complex responses, but fatal in reactive scenarios. Practice narrowing that gap. Not by rushing. By letting responses arise from nothing. Someone asks, how was your day? Instead of, evaluate how day was. Choose appropriate description. Consider their expectations. Formulate diplomatic response. Deliver. Just respond. The right words will come if you don't block them. This feels dangerous at first. Your mind will say, I need to think before I speak. I'll say something stupid. Start with low-stakes interactions. You'll discover something shocking. Your unmediated responses are often more authentic and appropriate than your calculated ones. Step 4. Cognitive fasting, weekly practice. 1 day per week, no cognitive enhancers of any kind. No caffeine. No nootropics. No performance supplements. Let your baseline consciousness reveal itself. Most people never experience their natural mind because they're always manipulating it. This is like never tasting water because you only drink flavored beverages. You need to know what your unenhanced consciousness actually is. Integration with previous steps. Do your morning practice on this day. Your awareness will be sharper than you expect. Expected challenge, you'll feel slower, duller, less capable. Solution, that's withdrawal, not your true baseline. After the 3rd of April fasting days, you'll discover your natural mind is more responsive than your enhanced one. Step 5. Instantaneous action, advanced integration. After 4 weeks of practice, introduce intentional immediacy. When you decide to stand, stand instantly. When you choose to speak, speak without rehearsal. When you reach for an object, reach without planning the movement. This isn't impulsivity. It's eliminating the microsecond lag where your mind commentates on your intentions. Musashi called this sen no sen, attacking at the exact moment your opponent intends to attack, not after their movement begins. You're sensing and responding at the level of intention, which exists before action. Common obstacle, fear of losing control. When this happens, remember Takeda-sensei's teaching. The sword too heavy cannot cut cleanly. Control is weight. Obstacles you'll face. Your mind will say, this is too simple. It can't work. I need to do something to improve. Without enhancement, I'll fall behind. That's normal. Even Miyamoto Musashi struggled with this before his greatest duel. Against Sasaki Kojiro, renowned as the greatest swordsman in Japan, Musashi arrived late. Deliberately. He made his opponent wait for hours on the beach, working himself into fury. When Musashi finally arrived, Kojiro was so enraged he attacked immediately. Musashi's mind, empty. Kojiro's mind, hurricane of anger and intent. Musashi killed him with a single strike from a wooden sword carved from an oar during the boat ride over. When your mind resists this practice, remember, the emptier the cup, the more it can hold. First 2 weeks, you'll feel like you're doing nothing. Cognitive dissonance will be intense. Trust the process. After 3 weeks, brief moments of true emptiness will appear. Don't grasp at them. After 6 weeks, your reactive response time will noticeably improve in familiar scenarios. After 3 months, you'll experience Mushin spontaneously during high-pressure moments. Not every time, but often enough to know it's real. Eventually, the distinction between practice and life dissolves. You're not doing Mushin. You're living from no mind naturally. Hiroshi thought he'd learned to shoot arrows more accurately, but he'd discovered something deeper. Mushin wasn't just about performance. It was about the nature of consciousness itself. Remember the paradox we opened with? High performers destroying their minds with optimization. Now you understand. Every supplement that sharpened their focus also thickened the membrane between awareness and action. They built a stronger operator in the control room of consciousness. But the fastest operations happen when there's no operator at all. Just the flow of reality through an empty vessel. This is what separates someone who performs well from someone who becomes the performance. Not intelligence, but transparency. Not enhancement, but absence. A mirror doesn't try to reflect. It reflects because it's empty of its own image. The samurai understood this. Takuan Soho wrote, "The mind must always be in the state of flowing, for when it stops anywhere that means the flow is interrupted, and it is this interruption that is injurious to the well-being of the mind. In the case of the swordsman, it means death. In your case, it might not mean physical death, but the death of presence. The death of responsiveness. The death of that instantaneous intelligence that exists before thought. The real stakes. This isn't about shooting arrows or winning sword fights. This is about recovering your original mind. The mind you had before you learned to narrate your experience. Before you developed the habit of watching yourself live instead of just living. About becoming someone who moves through the world like water, taking the shape of each moment without resistance." Miyamoto Musashi spent the final years of his life in a cave, writing. Not about technique. About emptiness. He wrote, "In the void is virtue, and no evil. Wisdom has existence, principle has existence, the way has existence, spirit is nothingness." Spirit is nothingness. Not because spirit doesn't exist, but because it exists before the distinction between something and nothing. If you're ready to walk this path, if you're tired of chemically propping up a mind that's fighting itself and ready for the transparency that makes enhancement obsolete, subscribe to this channel. We're building a community of modern warriors who choose presence over stimulation, emptiness over enhancement, being over becoming. Mushin doesn't make you better at thinking. It makes you better at not thinking. And in a world drowning in cognitive noise, that silence is the ultimate advantage. Walk with presence. Live with purpose. Become unshakable.